The wind whipped across the plains like a living thing, dragging the scent of gunpowder and rot through the broken boards of the old cattle ranch. Dust swirled in thin, violent spirals. Vultures circled above, patient silhouettes against the bleeding orange sky. Caleb Crow tugged the reins of his horse, which staggered beneath him, its flanks smeared with sweat and grit. Blood dripped slowly from a gash in his shoulder, the crusted edges dark under the tattered remains of his coat. He didn't know how long he'd been riding. Only that the sun had dropped lower since the firefight outside Redstone Ridge, and he'd been running from bullets, and himself, ever since. The ranch had been silent when he rode in, save for the creak of the windmill and the low groan of something wooden shifting with time. No smoke, no sound of livestock, no welcoming voice. Just emptiness and the faint iron stink of something dead nearby. Caleb dismounted stiffly, boots crunching through shattered glass and straw, hand resting loosely on the handle of his Colt. He crossed the yard in slow, careful strides. A child's doll, its face smeared with dirt and its eyes gouged out, lay face down in the dirt. The front door hung open, splintered from the inside. Inside the house, chairs were overturned, dishes smashed, dried blood streaking the wooden floor. There were no bodies, only signs of struggle, panic, and a sudden, violent end. Something shifted in the barn. It wasn't loud. Just a whisper barely louder than the wind. But Caleb's body went still. He drew his revolver, raising it with practiced silence. His boots were soundless on the earth as he stepped toward the barn. The door was ajar. He pressed his back to the wall, took a breath, and pushed it open with his boot. Darkness clung to the corners like cobwebs. Shafts of dying sunlight bled through the slats in the wall, painting the dust in golden beams. A few horseshoes hung from rusted nails. Hay piled in one corner. Tools dangled from pegs, most missing, others stained with rust or something darker. Then he heard it again. A breath. A soft chain rattle. "Hello?" he said cautiously, not lowering the gun. "Anyone in here?" No answer. Just the shift of something small. Deliberate. He stepped inside, letting his eyes adjust. And then he saw her. A girl no older than 12, sat with her knees drawn to her chest. Her dress was torn at the hem, her hair matted and hanging in tangled strands. Iron shackles bit into her ankles and wrists, tethering her to a post sunk into the barn floor. Her cheeks were bruised. Blood dried under her nose. She looked up at him, and her lips moved before any sound came out. "Please," she whispered. "Don't take my sister." Caleb lowered the revolver half an inch. Something caught in his throat. Not pity, he hadn't felt pity in years, but something colder, heavier. "I'm not here to hurt you," he said, voice steady, controlled. "Who did this?" Her eyes darted behind him. He turned slightly but saw no one. Just the wind. "Where's your sister?" he asked. The girl nodded toward the hay in the corner. He moved slowly, holstering the revolver. When he reached the pile, he crouched, lifted a few layers of hay, and there she was. A much smaller child, barely 5, curled in a trembling ball, eyes huge and dark. Her thumb was in her mouth, and she clutched a filthy rag doll to her chest. When she saw him, she whimpered. "It's okay," he said, softer now. "I ain't gonna let anyone hurt you." "Who are you?" the older girl asked, voice rough like it hadn't been used in days. "Name's Caleb Crow." The name meant nothing to her. He wasn't proud of it. "Why are you here?" "I could ask you the same," he said, pulling a small crowbar from his saddlebag. He walked back and knelt beside her. "Hold still." The shackle resisted, then gave with a harsh snap. The girl winced as her arms dropped free. "Sadie," she said suddenly. "My name's Sadie. That's June." "Sadie. You got folks?" "Not anymore." He didn't ask what happened. The signs were all around, torn fabric, dried blood, silence. He'd seen plenty of scenes like this, but never with survivors. As he worked on the second chain, Sadie added quietly, "They're coming back. The men who did this." Caleb looked up. Her eyes were clear now, not panicked, but burning with something fierce. Not fear. Not entirely. "How many?" "4. Maybe 5. They left us here to die. Or wait." She swallowed. He said someone would pay more for sisters. His hands froze, then clenched. "You trust me to get you out of here?" She hesitated, then nodded. He lifted June into his arms and motioned for Sadie to follow. "We'll ride double. No noise." He made it to the horse just as a shout echoed across the hills. Then another. He squinted, dust cloud, distant, low. Riders approaching. Damn it. He tossed Sadie up behind the saddle and passed June to her. Sadie wrapped her arms tight around her sister. Caleb mounted behind them and kicked the horse hard. Gunfire cracked through the air. "Hold on." The horse bolted, hooves pounding across the broken earth. Caleb felt a bullet zip past his ear. Another slammed into the ground inches from the horse's legs. One of the riders was gaining. A huge man with a red beard and a shotgun. Caleb jerked the reins, forcing the horse into a narrow arroyo. The walls closed around them, providing some cover. The bandit followed, hooting like a devil. Sadie screamed. Caleb spun in the saddle and fired. The bullet hit the man's chest. He stayed upright a second, eyes wide with surprise, then fell backwards off the horse. The body hit the canyon wall with a thud. The others kept chasing. No time to fight. They tore through the rocks and thorn brush, Caleb bleeding from his shoulder again, breath ragged. The horse stumbled but kept going. Caleb saw a fallen log ahead, kicked the horse into a sharp turn, nearly losing the saddle. Behind them, one rider slammed into a tree. Another's horse lost footing on loose shale and tumbled, taking its rider down. Only one kept coming. Fast. Caleb handed Sadie the reins. "Hold them steady." She gripped tight, knuckles white. He turned, drew his last bullet, took a breath. The shot rang out. The rider jerked, slumped, fell. Silence returned, broken only by the horse's heavy panting and Sadie's gasps. They rode for miles before Caleb finally slowed near a stand of rocks. There, he dismounted with a grunt and helped Sadie and June down. Sadie stood quietly, holding June's hand. Her dress fluttered in the breeze. She didn't ask what would happen next. She didn't cry. Caleb dropped to one knee and let his head fall forward, sweat dripping from his brow. Pain bloomed hot in his side. He'd reopened the wound. "You're hurt," Sadie said. "I've had worse," he muttered. "You shouldn't have come into the barn." He looked up at her. "I mean, most men would have heard me and kept going. Most men ain't got ghosts that scream louder than sense." She didn't understand the words, but she understood the tone. Sadie nodded. "Where are we going?" she asked finally. "Someplace safe. For now." "You got a home?" "No," he said. "But maybe we can make one." For a moment, the only sound was the rustling of grass in the evening wind. June leaned against Caleb's side, small fingers clutching his coat. He didn't pull away. The sun slipped below the horizon, casting the land in a bruised purple glow. The storm that had threatened all afternoon finally broke in the distance. Soft thunder rolling low, like something old waking from sleep. He didn't know what came next. He only knew he wasn't riding alone anymore. And that changed everything. They rode under moonlight, the world painted in silver and shadows. Caleb's breath rasped through clenched teeth, every bump in the trail flaring the wound in his shoulder. Sadie rode in front of him, her back stiff against his chest, one hand gripping the reins, the other wrapped tightly around her little sister. June had fallen asleep against her, a thumb tucked between her lips, unaware of the blood still drying on Caleb's coat. The silence stretched long, broken only by the rhythmic clop of hooves and the soft creak of saddle leather. No one spoke. Words didn't seem right just yet. The trail narrowed as they climbed into the high country, away from the wide open flats. Cottonwoods lined the banks of a lazy creek, their leaves hissing softly in the breeze. Somewhere an owl called. Farther off, a coyote howled and Sadie flinched. "You ever been up this way?" she asked suddenly. Caleb shook his head, then remembered she couldn't see him. "Not in a while. Too many eyes near the rail towns. Up here, folks mind their own business. Unless they're looking to sell girls in chains." Her voice was flat, but the bitterness was raw. Caleb didn't respond right away. He'd been replaying that barn scene in his mind every mile they'd traveled. That whisper. The look in her eyes. "You done things you regret?" she asked. He gave a soft grunt, half laugh, half something else. "Enough to fill a graveyard." "Then we're the same. You're a kid. I ain't anymore." He didn't argue. She was right. He'd seen what war did to boys. This was worse. He pulled the horse up near a thicket of pine and dismounted, biting back a grunt of pain as his boots hit the ground. Sadie climbed down with June in her arms. "We'll rest here," he said. "A few hours, maybe less. Don't want to stay still too long." She nodded, but her eyes lingered on the tree line. Caleb found a flat patch of dirt and dropped his saddlebag. He pulled out a battered tin kettle, filled it with creek water, and set it on a small fire. Sadie settled near the flames, June curled against her chest like a sleeping kitten. The warmth was a fragile shield against the mountain night. "You carry that kettle with you everywhere?" Sadie asked. "Only when I expect to live through the night." She gave a small, reluctant smile. "That's funny." He raised an eyebrow. Didn't mean it to be. I know. That's what made it funny. They fell quiet again. The fire crackled softly. Caleb dug a strip of jerky from his pocket and offered it to Sadie. She sniffed it first, then took a bite, chewing slowly, thoughtfully. She's all I got, she said, glancing at June. I figured. I kept her quiet when they came. Told her to pretend she was asleep even when they hit me. I thought maybe, if she looked dead. Her voice broke for the first time just slightly. Caleb didn't move, didn't speak. He just listened. I kept thinking someone would come, she whispered. That Pa would walk through the door with his shotgun or Ma would scream at them till they ran. But they didn't. They just, she stopped. Some things, Caleb said quietly, you don't get to understand. You just live through them. I don't want to just live. He nodded. Then don't. The wind shifted. The horses pawed nervously. Caleb stood, eyes scanning the dark. You expecting someone? Sadie asked, suddenly tense. No, he said, reaching for his rifle. That's the problem. He moved to the edge of the trees, scanning the brush. Nothing moved. No sound beyond the whispering pines and the crackle of fire. Still, his gut twisted. He returned slowly, sat again, rifle across his lap. You ever kill anyone? Sadie asked, not looking at him. He didn't answer right away. She turned to face him. I want to know. I want to know who's protecting us. He met her eyes. Yes. She nodded. Were they bad? He hesitated. Some were just in the way. She didn't flinch. She just said, then don't let us be in the way. Caleb didn't sleep that night. When the fire burned down to embers and the girls finally dozed, he sat with his back to a tree, gun across his knees, eyes on the shadows. Morning came pale and cold. They moved before the sun fully cleared the horizon. By noon, the trees thinned, revealing the jagged edge of Lonesome Ridge, a narrow town perched like a tick on the spine of the world. One saloon, one church, a general store, a crooked row of cabins, and dust blowing through every crack. Caleb reined in the horse at the edge of town, jaw tight. We don't stay long, he said. Sadie nodded. June slept, limp and warm in her arms. A boy ran past, barefoot and shouting something about a snake. An old man spit tobacco into the dirt and glared at them like they'd ridden in with a plague. Caleb ignored them. They made for the general store, tying the horse near the rail. Inside, the air was cool and thick with the smell of old flour and kerosene. The shopkeeper, a thin woman with gray braids and sharp eyes, looked up from a ledger. You look half dead, she said bluntly. Just need bandages. And food, Caleb said. And a bath maybe, she muttered, already turning to grab a cloth bundle. She handed him a roll of bandages, a tin of salve, and 3 apples. Take care of them, girls, she added quietly. Ain't safe for young ones around here. Caleb's eyes narrowed. Why not? The woman looked around, then leaned closer. You didn't hear it from me, but Sheriff runs the law here like it's a damn card game. And Clay McAllister owns the deck. That name again. He owns half the ridge and he's got a taste for shadows. What does he look like? Tall. Always wears red velvet like he's royalty. Gold tooth. Smile like a snake's. Caleb felt Sadie stiffen behind him. That's him, she whispered. That's the one who chained us. His pulse thudded. He turned back to the woman. He here now? Most days he's in the saloon upstairs. Thinks he's a king. Caleb paid, thanked her, and left without another word. Outside, the sun was high and hot, but his blood had gone cold. They walked back to the horse. Sadie said nothing, her jaw clenched so tight it trembled. You sure it's him? Caleb asked. I never forget a face. You said we'd fetch good coin. He said girls don't scream as loud when you break them in early. Caleb's grip on the reins tightened until the leather creaked. I should have killed him when I had the chance, Sadie muttered. Caleb didn't answer. He was watching the saloon windows. Let's move on, he said. You're just gonna leave him? Her voice rose. He's here. Right now. You said you'd protect us. I said I'd get you safe. And what happens when he comes after us again? What if he finds another girl? You gonna run every time? Caleb looked down at her. She wasn't just angry, she was terrified. Furious because she was helpless. Because he could ride away and she couldn't. He put a hand on her shoulder. We don't fight men like that in broad daylight. Not when they own the sheriff. Not with June in your arms. She held his gaze, then nodded tightly. We ride west, he said. There's a cabin I knew about. It's not much, but it's quiet. She didn't speak again until they'd ridden out of town, past the last fence post and over the next ridge. You said you've killed people, she said finally. Yeah. Would you kill him? Caleb didn't look back. If it comes to it, he'll come for us. I know. She adjusted June gently in the saddle. Then you better be ready. The wind picked up again, curling around the rocks like a warning. Caleb said nothing more, but his hand never left the grip of his revolver. Behind them, the town of Lonesome Ridge shrank into dust and shadow. Ahead, the trail twisted into the hills, and with it, the weight of everything yet to come. The cabin was barely more than 4 walls and a roof, tucked into a hollow at the edge of the high pines. It leaned a little to the left, as if it had once tried to stand straight and simply given up. But it was dry, hidden, and most importantly, forgotten. Caleb led the horse to the shed behind it, what used to be a tack barn, and unhitched the girls, helping Sadie down first, then June, who was finally starting to stir from her long sleep. Where are we? Sadie asked, brushing dust from her skirt. Used to be a ranger's cabin, Caleb said. Man owed me a favor once. Left it to me when he passed. Looks like no one's been here in years. That's the idea. Inside, the place smelled of wood rot and dust, but it was solid. There was a stone hearth, a cot with musty blankets, and a single window looking out at the trees. Caleb opened the shutters, letting in the late afternoon light. It fell across the wooden floor in golden stripes, revealing a family of mice that quickly darted for cover. Sadie walked the perimeter slowly, running her fingers along the walls as though testing them for secrets. You think McAllister will find us? If he does, Caleb said, unbuckling his gun belt and laying it on the table, he won't like what's waiting. June coughed softly, pressing herself against her sister's side. Caleb watched them from across the room, noting the way Sadie instinctively wrapped an arm around her. They moved like a single unit now, one watching the world, the other still escaping it. He tossed a log into the fireplace and struck a match. Flame caught. The warmth spread quickly, battling the stale chill inside the cabin. We'll stay a while, he said. Let the trail go cold. I'll scout the ridge tomorrow, set traps for food. There's a creek not far, clean water. You'll be safe here. Sadie sat down beside the hearth, June leaning into her lap. Her face, pale from exhaustion and hunger, reflected the firelight. You're good at this, she said. At what? Surviving. Planning. Watching every window like you expect a bullet to come through it. Caleb took a seat across from her. Doesn't mean I'm good at keeping people alive. You kept us alive. For now. He reached for a cloth and started unwrapping his shoulder. Sadie winced when she saw the wound. That's bad. It's not the worst I've had. You need stitches. Been living too long to start trusting thread and a shaky hand. She crawled over and took the cloth from him. I'm not shaky. He watched her with wary eyes as she opened the tin of salve, dipped her fingers into the cool ointment, and pressed it gently to the torn skin. He gritted his teeth but didn't flinch. You've done this before, he muttered. Pa got into fights. Drank too much. Always came home with something busted. Ma would scream and throw pants. I'd patch him up while she cooled off. Caleb didn't reply. He let her work in silence. The room filled with the smell of smoke and pine resin. Outside, the wind shifted, and somewhere in the hills, a tree groaned under its own weight. When she finished, Sadie wrapped the shoulder tightly. You should sleep. You should eat, he said, nodding at the sack he'd packed earlier. Dried beans, a loaf of hard bread, and a tin of peaches he'd stolen from a rail cart weeks ago. She took it, portioned some for June first, then nibbled at the rest. When they were done, she leaned back against the stone, arms wrapped around her knees. Do you ever dream of them? She asked. Who? The people you lost. Or the ones you couldn't save. Caleb stared at the fire. I don't sleep long enough to dream. I do. Every night. Ma's voice calling my name. Pa screaming. The chains. Her voice faded. Caleb saw her jaw clench, but no tears came. Dreams change over time, he said. First they haunt you. Then they just whisper. Do yours whisper now? They stopped talking a long time ago. She watched him closely, then whispered, Do you think I'll ever forget it? What happened? No. But you'll learn how to carry it. Silence fell between them again, heavy but not unwelcome. The next morning, Caleb rose before the sun, slung his rifle across his back and stepped outside. The air was sharp, clean. No footprints in the dirt except his own. He walked to the ridge, scanning the horizon. No dust trails. No riders. No sound beyond the chatter of birds waking in the trees. Back at the cabin, Sadie was up, boiling water over the fire. June clung to her legs, sleepy-eyed and hungry. Caleb set 3 rabbits down on the table, fresh from the traps. You kill all those this morning? Sadie asked. Didn't kill themselves. He skinned them quickly, methodically, while she watched with fascination and slight horror. You ever hunt? I've watched paw-trap squirrels. Never had the stomach to gut them. You'll learn. I want to, she said firmly. I want to know how to do everything you know. Caleb paused. That a fact. I want to know how to shoot, how to track, how to fight. I don't want to be helpless again. He looked at her long and hard, then nodded. After we eat, he said. The first lesson was in the clearing beside the creek. Caleb handed her the small Colt .22 he carried for emergencies. It was light, easy to handle. Sadie took it with both hands, examining the weight. You ever fired one before? He asked. No. He stepped behind her, adjusting her grip. Easy. Don't fight the recoil. Just aim steady. Breathe. She fired. Missed. Again. She missed again. And again. On the 4th try, she clipped the edge of a can he'd set on a stump. She looked up wide-eyed. Good, Caleb said. Now do it 10 more times. Over the next week, the cabin became something strange. A home. Not in the way she remembered. No mother humming by the stove, no pa with his boots propped up and a smile half buried in his beard. But there was a rhythm. She and June swept the floor. Caleb hunted. Sadie practiced her aim every morning and walked the perimeter with him every night. She learned to read tracks, to move quietly, to listen not just for noise, but for silence that didn't belong. And for the first time Sadie laughed. It was a brief thing. June had splashed her in the creek and shrieked with delight, and Sadie had chased her through the tall grass, wet to her knees, giggling like she was 12 again and didn't remember the chains. Caleb watched from the porch, a quiet smile tugging at his lips. That night, as the stars poured across the sky, Sadie sat beside him. Is this what peace feels like? She asked. It's a quiet moment, he replied. Don't waste it trying to define it. I like it. So do I. They sat in silence, watching the fireflies dance at the edge of the pines. But the peace was thin, like a fragile layer of ice over dark water. The next morning, Caleb noticed the bird calls had stopped. He crouched near the shed, fingers in the dirt. Tracks fresh. Boot prints. Big ones. Too heavy to be his or Sadie's. He stood slowly, eyes sweeping the tree line. His breath caught. A figure just at the edge of the forest. Watching. Then gone. He turned back to the cabin, calm but urgent. Sadie, he called. Pack what you can. She didn't question. She moved fast, scooping June into her arms and stuffing what little they had into the saddlebags. We ride now. Not yet. He stepped inside, grabbed the rifle, the revolver, a handful of shells. Someone found us? Maybe. Or they're looking. Either way, we're not going to wait and see. Sadie's hands trembled slightly as she pulled the boots onto June's feet. What do we do? Caleb looked at her, voice low and certain. We survive. Like we always do. Outside, the woods watched them with new silence. And somewhere too far to see but close enough to feel, Clay McAllister smiled. The wind picked up as Caleb led the horse through the gulch, the saddle creaking beneath the weight of their supplies and the 2 girls clinging to either side. Dust twisted in narrow columns around their boots, and the trees thinned behind them, opening into the jagged highlands where the sun blazed like a hanging lantern over the world. They had been riding for hours, the silence between them punctuated only by the sound of hooves on stone and June's occasional murmur against Sadie's shoulder. Caleb had chosen the path deliberately, a narrow, winding trail through broken hills that few riders dared to take. But now the tension that buzzed behind his ribs told him it hadn't been enough. Sadie felt it too. Her hand never left the small pistol at her side, and her eyes were sharper than they'd ever been, scanning every boulder and tree like they might come to life. What if it's him? She whispered finally. What if he followed us? Caleb didn't answer at first. He slowed the horse, stepping down to study the tracks behind them. 1 set. Then 2. Then more. It's not if, he said. It's when. He turned back to her, jaw set. We're making a stand. Her breath caught. Here? No. Not yet. But soon. They pushed on, climbing higher until the ridge curved into a bowl of stone, a natural cul-de-sac with a sheer cliff at the back and only one way in or out. Caleb dismounted, tying the reins to a low-hanging branch. His eyes scanned the edge of the rise. Good vantage. Clean lines of sight. Limited exposure. He could make this work. Sadie slid off, lifting June down beside her. The girl was pale, too quiet, her small face drawn with fatigue and fear. Caleb knelt in front of her, resting a hand on her shoulder. "You're safe," he said softly. "But you need to stay hidden. Up there." He pointed to a crook in the rocks, half covered by brush and dry grass. June nodded, fingers tightening around Sadie's coat. Sadie knelt with her. "I'll be right here," she promised. "You don't make a sound no matter what happens. Understand?" June nodded again, mute but resolute. She scurried up the rocks and tucked herself out of sight. Then it was just the two of them, Caleb and Sadie, standing in the bowl, guns in hand and the sun dropping fast behind them. Caleb glanced at her. "You scared?" "Yes." "Good. Means you're thinking straight." She smiled weakly. "Are you?" "I'm always scared," he said. "Only fools walk into a gunfight without it." They didn't have long to wait. The first shot cracked the stillness like a whip. A bullet split the bark beside Caleb's head. He ducked low, rolled behind a boulder, and fired back. Another shot rang out, then another from the opposite side. "They're flanking us," he called. Sadie was already moving, crouched low, skirting the rocks toward higher ground. She fired twice, both misses but close enough to keep the gunman ducking. Caleb picked off one as he crested a rock, the body tumbling into the dirt below with a final, lifeless grunt. There were three more. One moved fast, circling behind. Caleb tracked him, firing once, twice. The second shot caught him square in the chest. The man collapsed in a heap, rifle falling from his grip. The third was smarter. He stayed low, using the terrain. Caleb lost sight of him just as Sadie cried out. He spun around. She was pinned, back against a stone outcrop, her pistol empty. The third man was bearing down on her, a cruel grin stretching his face, a knife drawn. Caleb raised his rifle. Too far. He ran instead, boots slamming into the stone, lungs burning. The man lunged at Sadie just as she threw a handful of gravel into his eyes. He flinched, staggered, and Caleb crashed into him like a falling tree. They hit the ground hard, rolling, fists flying. The knife sliced Caleb's side, shallow but burning. He headbutted the man, dazed him, then smashed a rock into his skull. The man went still. Caleb lay there a moment, breathing hard, then rose slowly. Sadie stared at him, eyes wide, chest heaving. "Thanks," she breathed. "I told you," he said, gripping his side. "Don't run out of bullets." She helped him stand. They looked around. The ridge was silent now, the last rays of sun dripping over the hills like blood. For bodies lay scattered across the rock. But McAllister wasn't among them. Caleb's expression darkened. This was a scout team. Sadie swallowed hard. "Then he's close." Caleb looked up at the setting sun. "He's coming tonight." They didn't speak again until dark. They dragged the bodies into a crevice and covered them with rocks. Sadie fetched water. Caleb patched the cut at his side. June came down from her hiding spot, eyes huge but unharmed. They lit no fire. Ate nothing. Slept only in turns. Then, as the moon crested over the ridge, the sound came, slow, deliberate hoofbeats on gravel. Caleb stood at the edge of the bowl, rifle in hand. McAllister rode in like a ghost, dressed in black, the silver on his coat catching the moonlight. 6 more men followed him, grizzled, cruel, armed to the teeth. "Evenin'," he drawled. "Hell of a night for a reunion." Caleb didn't move. "I warned you." "You did," McAllister nodded. "But you took my cargo. My coin. And worse, you made me look soft in front of men I raised. I took 2 girls from a slaver. That's not theft. That's justice." McAllister smiled, slow and cold. "I don't do justice, Caleb. I do business." He dismounted, drawing his revolver with the ease of a man who never had to miss. Sadie stepped forward, rifle ready. "Well now," McAllister said, amused. "That the girl?" "She has a name," Caleb said. "I bet she does. Pretty name. Pretty face. Shame what's coming to her." Caleb's eyes narrowed. "You'll never touch her." McAllister raised his pistol. "Then you'll die first." The gunshot echoed like thunder, but not from his hand. Sadie fired first. The shot struck one of the men beside McAllister, dropping him instantly. Then chaos. Caleb opened fire, hitting another. Bullets whizzed through the bowl. Sadie dropped behind a boulder, reloading. June screamed from the rocks above. McAllister was moving, fast and precise, barking orders, his own gun roaring. Caleb ducked, rolled, shot one more through the gut. 3 left. Then 2. Sadie screamed, a bullet grazing her arm. She clutched it, bleeding but still standing. Caleb's rifle clicked. Empty. He pulled his revolver, circled left. McAllister saw him. "You always were stubborn," he growled. I learned from the best, Caleb spat. They fired at the same time. Caleb's shot hit McAllister in the shoulder, spinning him back. McAllister's shot missed, went wild. Sadie raised her rifle, aimed true, and fired. The bullet struck McAllister square in the chest. He staggered, mouth open, eyes full of disbelief. Then he dropped. Silence. Caleb stood slowly, breathing hard, smoke rising from the barrel of his revolver. He looked over at Sadie, her hands shaking, the rifle slipping from her fingers. "It's over," she whispered. He nodded. "It's over." June came running down from the rocks. Sadie caught her, held her tight, weeping for the first time, not in fear but in relief. Caleb holstered his weapon, limped toward them. The moon cast them all in silver. Later, when dawn broke over the ridge and the bodies were buried, Caleb sat on the edge of the cliff, staring out over the valley. Sadie joined him, arm bandaged, hair tangled. "I thought we'd die last night," she said softly. "So did I." She was quiet for a moment. Then, "What now?" He glanced at her, a faint smile ghosting his lips. "Now you live. You teach your sister how to read, how to shoot, how to ride. You find a place no man like McAllister can reach. You remember how to breathe. And you? I've still got ghosts to bury." Sadie reached out, took his hand. "Then when you're done, come find us." He nodded, silent. The wind blew through the pines again, soft now, like a lullaby. And somewhere far below, the world kept turning.